Welcome into the GoVols247 Podcast, a Thursday, September 4th edition of the podcast. Happy opening day for NFL football. I know this is a college football podcast, but I'm excited for some NFL football tonight as well. I'm just excited for football. I'm still riding the high of 5 straight days of college football at night. And so since that is up, I am very much excited to at least have NFL football here on a Thursday night and have a pretty good matchup to start things out. Certainly an entertaining matchup from storylines perspective, but that's not why we're here. I've already talked too much NFL football. I apologize, Patrick. I know you'll scold me after we are finished. Although shout out to Juwan Jennings, got a little more coin in his wallet overnight. $3 million worth of incentives added to his contract that he could potentially earn and go from $7 million to $10 million this season. I believe were the dollar amounts, which is good for him because I believe up until last year he had not made was not receiving $1 million or more in any year of his contract up until last year. So good for the dog, Juwan Jennings, who you know will be locked in on Tennessee football this weekend. We've got a bit of a different podcast for you here for our preview podcast. We're going to do a mailbag edition of the podcast since it is FCS week. The game's not even being televised. So if the game's not being televised, then it's being streamed instead. Why should we take it seriously? No, we are taking it seriously, but we are going to have our annual, I guess you could call it. We do this every FCS week. It seems a mailbag edition of the podcast. Before we jump into all of the wonderful questions, Patrick Brown, Ryan Callahan, good to see y'all. How are y'all doing?
We really should do these mailbag podcasts more because it gets A, our subscribers involved, and B, it just gets other people involved. And, that's less work for us, right? We don't have to come up with talking points. They are given to us, but it also is a little more, I don't say off the cuff, but you the people get to find out what you want to find out.
Yeah, I like these. And doing well. Hope you guys are too. And I guess we can plan on doing another one of these for New Mexico State week because even though they're not FCS, it's pretty much the same thing.
What about UAB?
That's 2 weeks away, but yeah, maybe that one too. We'll discuss.
That not looking too good for Trent Dilfer. Birmingham radio was appointment television or appointment listening this week.
But not because of the Blazers.
Not because of the Blazers, but because of what happened with the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tallahassee over the weekend. But by virtue of me listening to that appointment radio, I did hear some UAB Blazer talk in the Birmingham area, and they did not look great in their opener, but apparently folks are more excited about Trent Dilfer's offense. But nonetheless, I mean, we'll bring the Mailbag podcast back that Thursday of UAB weeks because quite frankly it should be a pretty similar result. Ryan, we're going to start with you right off the jump here because we have had a bit of recruiting news here on Thursday. Somehow after Monday's debacle, Bill Belichick has managed to flip a recruit, not just a Tennessee recruit, but any recruit. I'm dumbfounded, quite frankly, by JB Shabazz flipping from Tennessee to North Carolina. P Bizzle 23 on the checkerboard also seems to be confused. He asks, did JT Shabazz just flip? And I guess in the NIL era, I should not be that surprised.
Yeah, I think that's the key point here. North Carolina, going into this week, there really wasn't believed to be any reason for Tennessee to worry about JB Shabazz. You asked that very question on our podcast Monday, talking about Hezekiah Harris, I believe. And at the time, nothing was brewing. And then he shows up at North Carolina Monday night for the North Carolina TCU game. And things got real pretty quickly from there. So North Carolina made a big push, and that's going to happen. And obviously that's a program desperate for an in-state win, desperate for a tackle with NFL length, kind of like JB Shabazz has. And so they made a big push. Tennessee went beyond what Tennessee was willing to do to keep him. And those kinds of things are going to happen. So I'm sure some people look at it and say, how has North Carolina stolen 2 players away from Tennessee? Well, one, Carson Snead flipped because his brother's at North Carolina. At least that was a big contributing factor to that one. And then now in this case, you've got an in-state kid that North Carolina really prioritized and was willing to do more to get him than Tennessee was to keep him. So those things are going to happen. You gotta look at those as let's face it, salary cap decisions. You gotta manage your resources well. And Tennessee still has a couple other tackles in this class, so not the end of the world, but obviously a guy that you didn't want to lose, and that was a tackle you were pretty excited about his long-term potential. So you hate to see it happen, but these are the decisions Josh Heupel and his staff get paid to make, and you got to draw the line somewhere when it comes to doling out those revenue sharing and NIL dollars.
Patrick, 7th78 wants to know if Braylon Staley is going to get to 1,000 receiving yards this season. And 7th did have two questions. That was the first one. Does Braylon Staley get to 1,000 receiving yards? The other question was over under 9 wins, which that's a fun one because he didn't give you the 9.5. I think if he was giving you 8.5 or 9.5, that makes it easier to answer. But just a full number, man, that's a tough over under.
Yeah, I'll start with Staley. I thought he had a really strong game against Syracuse. Obviously made the big play over the top, but he also going back and watching some of the offense, he blocked his behind off and did a really nice job on a couple of plays. I tweeted out a clip of a play late in the game where I think there were about 6 Syracuse guys on the ground at some point, courtesy of blocks from Tennessee's offensive line and a couple of the wide receivers out there too. That was late in the game. That was very much a attitude, impose your will kind of a drive by the Tennessee offense. But I think Staley, I think he comes out of that first game probably, you'd say he was the best Tennessee wide receiver in that game, and maybe he will continue to be Tennessee's best receiver. Certainly I like his skill set. I think he's got some quickness. He's got to stay healthy. Obviously he's missed some time in camps in spring since he's been here. So if he stays healthy, the math says right now, if he does 95 yards a game for the rest of the season, he will definitely clear 1,000 yards. So we'll have to see that, with these young guys, you hear the term stack games, stack days. They've got to do that. So Staley's got to go out there and be just as good as he was last week. And if he's able to build some early momentum, become sort of a go-to guy that Tennessee draws up shot plays for like they did last week, and Joey Aguilar continues to develop trust with him, it's certainly, I think, on the table. And there's really not a ton of other guys who are going to necessarily chew up targets, take targets away from him too. So I think it's much more of a possibility than I would have said maybe before last week, but I like Staley's game and he made a good impact, and now he's got to build on it. We've gotten some questions like this. I feel like, would anybody change their record, opinion? Certainly the way Tennessee looked and the way Alabama looked. What's their state going to be here in 6 weeks? Who knows? I mean, it's already seemed, has been kind of touched on with the Birmingham radio. It already seems pretty restless down there. Was that just a blip for Alabama? I think this has been a blip for more than just that day against Florida State. So Nick Saban's not there anymore. So I would tend to I think I might go over on 9 wins at this point. But
would you rather play Alabama this weekend or in October?
Let's play them in October after they've gone to Georgia. Maybe I can pull up their schedule here real quick while I'm talking through it. They still got to go to Georgia. They got to play Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin looked great, and that game's at home. But hold on. Talk while I look up their schedule.
Ryan, what's your thoughts on Braylon Staley getting to 1,000 yards? And I'll say it. I'll change my record prediction to Patrick's simple point of I think Tennessee beats Alabama. That was part of the reason I picked them to go 9-3 is I thought they would lose in Tuscaloosa. I don't know how you could pick Alabama to beat Tennessee and even in Bryant-Denny after what we saw this first weekend. So I'll say over on the 9 wins.
On Braylon Staley, let's wait and see. One game obviously suggests he's got a chance, but I could see the leading receiver kind of bouncing around from week to week a little more than what we saw this past week. And Staley obviously hit a deep ball for 73 yards in the first game. So could end up being, Mike Matthews or Chris Brazzell that we're talking about, being the leading receiver the next couple games. So we'll see about that. But I would lean towards saying no, just because I think they'll spread the wealth a little bit more. And I'm not sure what the average passing numbers will look like week to week. So I think he'll have a good season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's Tennessee's leading receiver, but 1,000 yards is a pretty big number in college compared to the NFL because you've got fewer games. unless you make the playoff, obviously. On the record, I've said all along, I said it earlier this week on our podcast, I think, Patrick, as we kind of discussed this a little bit, I lean more toward the 10-2 side of 9-3 as opposed to 8-4, and I felt that way going into the season, but I'm not ready to give them that Alabama game just yet. Jam Miller was out this past week. Alabama will probably have time to figure some things out. I'm not saying they will, but they've got time. And the bottom line for me is I've got to see Tennessee go on the road and win in a tough environment to believe they're going to do it. Josh Heupel teams have struggled to do that. And until you show you can do it, that's a tall task. So I'm gonna still lean toward the push, I guess, over 10-2. But I could absolutely see 10-2 and think it's a very realistic goal.
Alabama's schedule has at Georgia, then they play Vanderbilt at home. They said all offseason that was going to be a revenge game, but they also said they were going to handle Florida State too. So we'll see about that. Then they go to Missouri.
Florida State's also a weird matchup. I will say that Florida State with what Castellanos does, that's you're not going to face many teams doing that every year.
Yeah, you got punked by a guy that called you out in the offseason and got benched at Boston College. So your program is down hard.
I think Florida State is better than we expected, Ryan, to your point, which I think you were also kind of making by also saying that Castellanos is a weird matchup. I do think Florida State has a really good football team. That might be the bigger takeaway, but I don't care about matchups when you're not hustling to the football in the season opener against a prominent opponent on the road and you're already in a battle. Like I hear you with the atmosphere and all that, but like I have zero faith in that Alabama football team against anybody until they show that they actually want to play with effort and not jog to the football when trying to make a tackle. How does that happen in your season opener?
Yeah, a lot of lows. That's concerning to see guys not hustling and playing their hardest in a game like that on the road to start the season. And yeah, that's concerning. But as we talked about, the noise gets pretty loud at a place like Alabama when things aren't going well. I want to see how that team responds, this week and going forward. That's a tough situation to if you hear that noise and don't respond, obviously things are going to get pretty ugly before Tennessee comes to town. So I would assume they'll bounce back, but to what degree? I'm really interested in seeing that.
Atlanta Vol has 3 questions. Ryan, we'll let you take the first one. 2027 visitors this weekend. Who would be noteworthy of that list?
Was that about this weekend or I think he's talking about next weekend for the Georgia game.
I'm sorry, that was next weekend.
Oh yeah,
2027s. Any big time 2027s planning to be in Knoxville next weekend?
Yeah, the ones we know about so far, Cooper Witten, the big-time linebacker out of Texas, obviously Jason Witten's son, plans to be back in town for that one. And David Gabriel George is the 5-star in-state running back from Baylor School in Chattanooga, originally from Canada. He's planning to be at that one too. We'll probably make it to Tennessee more than once this season, but that's the one he's had circled on the calendar for a little while. So those are a couple, but it'll be a long list of impressive players. This will be Tennessee's biggest recruiting weekend of the season, or next week will be, and no doubt there will be a lot of big names to talk about. I'm sure Tennessee will try to get DJ Jacobs back in town, the 5-star edge from the Atlanta area. That's Tennessee and Georgia are 2 of the top contenders for him, so I'm sure he would like to see them play. A lot of Georgia guys, I'm sure, will make it in for that one. Elijah Hutchinson is another one that I talked with last week, a 4-star offensive tackle from Raven Gap that played against Baylor last week in Chattanooga. So he plans to be back in. He's a top 100 player. So bunch of guys, but yeah, those are just a few we know about so far.
Patrick, who are 3 to 4 players on either line of scrimmage who you think can parlay extended reps this weekend against East Tennessee State into either being in the defensive line rotation or more ready to contribute if needed against Georgia? Who can have a big weekend on the line of scrimmage against ETSU that can lead to more reps against Georgia?
Well, I'll start on the offensive line, and I'll go with David Sanders Jr. needs reps. I mean, if he's going to be your guy at right tackle, the rest of the season, this is a good opportunity for him to get out there and after what happened last week and play. I'm sure he'll be amped up to go at Neyland Stadium, presuming he's ready to go. Again, they thought he was going to play on Friday of last week, and then day of the game that changes. So we'll have to see, but I think he's expected to be back, and ETSU's got a couple of pretty solid FCS level pass rushers too. So a longer, probably faster guy, and then a guy with some size on him too. So that'll be a nice challenge, I think, for Sanders in his first college game before he goes into the SEC. I think they need to get William Satterwhite some snaps. I know. I think this question is probably more geared towards guys probably outside of the top 6 or 7, but I think Satterwhite, he got in the game against Syracuse, but it wasn't long. So, he's probably your 7th guy at this point. I think, any reps he can get at center could be beneficial, just so you don't have much of a drop off in terms of all the mechanics and operation that you need from that position from Sam Pendleton, who I thought looked pretty good in his first game for Tennessee. I think you need to get some Satterwhite some work in this game. And then I'd probably go Bennett Warren just because, he's probably your 4th tackle at this point, a guy that was a top 100 recruit, played a little bit last year, but not a whole lot. He's obviously developed quite a bit since he got here a year ago, and now you want to see what he looks like in a game setting. On the defensive line, I think you probably could start with Isaiah Campbell. I don't think played last week, so this is a chance for maybe him to get on the field and show where he's at. And I think Ethan Utley and Jamal Wallace, they just need reps. Those are probably the next guys up in that rotation. They're going to have to be. Certainly, I think Dominic Bailey will be a factor in the defensive tackle position. Does he start there and they put Weathersby at defensive end to start because they've got him and Tyree West there and Marion Dyer for that matter. So I would say that those are probably the 3 guys on the defensive line that I would look towards that need some reps in this game just for their own development. And yeah.
I think you also might be wondering about guys, like you said, that aren't in the rotation right now. And to your point, I think Bennett
guys aren't in the rotation, and it's hard. I don't see any of those guys. I don't know if you named any names in the question, but I don't see any Carson Gentles or Kellen Lindstroms or any of those guys forcing their way into the rotation without at least a couple more injuries.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I don't think outside Bennett Warren, I don't think there's anybody on the offensive line that really needs reps. That's going to be more of a factor. And it certainly helps to get a Max Anderson, it's Gage Ginther, whoever out of that group, some early work. And Anthony Ogumaro, a freshman, I think that you like his long-term potential, but probably not going to be a factor this year. And then on the defensive line, Josh Shell would be one that maybe comes to mind. Seeing what you have more in him, I don't think he's set the world on fire so far. It's been a tough transition, I think, from Grand Valley State to Tennessee, but can he give you something as a veteran transfer that he maybe hasn't shown so far? This might be a good chance to test him out and see what you can get there. So yeah, definitely, I agree with your pick on Isaiah Campbell, but that was another veteran that came to mind for me that might be an option if they had another injury or two there.
For both of you, Atlanta Vols, last of the 3 questions. Marcus Gorey, Trey Poteet, Sidney Walton, Tim Merritt, Dylan Lewis, any of those defensive backs, young defensive backs, any of them close or able to play real snaps if needed?
What's the definition of close? I don't know that any of those guys are the 3rd corner at this point. And I wonder if they wouldn't just slide Jalen McMurray out to corner and play Boo Carter at star if something happened early in the game, or, they had another injury to Colton Hood or Ty Redmond at this point. I think that's probably the direction they go. Not saying that they wouldn't also maybe in this game just play William Wright as that other corner too. So I think those guys are probably more special teams at this point. One of those guys is probably the 4th safety. So you'd like to get all of them at least a little bit on the field. Maybe that's Merritt, maybe that's Sidney Walton, but I don't think those guys are particularly close to really being a factor on the rotation on defense. But again, you're down your top 2 corners, and so all those guys need to kind of be on standby at this point.
I think the closest out of that group might be Poteet or Tim Merritt. Maybe we'll see. This weekend will give us a better feel for that. But yeah, to your point, Patrick, I think William Wright would come in before any of those guys right now, and this weekend maybe can give us a better sense of whether any of those guys is capable of making a push.
Let me ask you this, Patrick, and Ryan, of course, chime in. Something that Swain and I were talking about during Thursday morning show is obviously Boo Carter's repetitions have now gone up kind of by default, and you certainly trust Boo Carter physically in between the white lines, but what happens with Boo Carter positionally? Is he only a star? I don't know that you could play him at safety. That would be the other spot for him, I suppose. It's certainly not corner, just because I think you'd rather have Colton Hood and Ty Redmond out there, and you would try to maybe shore up safety a little bit more before you would try and shore up corner. So my thought was, Boo sticks at star kind of by default, because I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think he's repped really anywhere else. And so Jalen McMurray might be the one that would have to move the safety in that instance, because I'm not taking Jalen McMurray off the field. Jalen McMurray has to go somewhere. It's not going to be to corner. And I would think that they would trust McMurray more at safety than they would Boo. What are your thoughts on that?
I think probably Boo could play safety. I think those three positions are, I don't want to say interchangeable, but it's kind of one of those deals where if you learn one of them, you could probably go in and play the third one. I just think star is his best spot. That's where he's going to make the biggest impact. That's where you have him defending slot receivers. That's where you have him blitzing off the edge like he did on that fourth down against Syracuse, where, he was shot out of a cannon, but didn't make the play in that moment. But yeah, I think McMurray is probably more likely the guy to move. But to your point, Ben, he played so well in the opener that, do you want to move him? I don't think they want to, unless, again, I think something would have to happen to Colton Hood or Ty Redmond. Maybe not this week, but maybe against Georgia. And again, Ricky Gibson's going to be out a while. We'll see about Jamal McCoy if he's back before the end of September. We'll see. But I think McMurray is probably just because he can, that's the easiest move. It impacts the least amount of positions in the secondary. You look at the offensive line last week, that David Sanders out, they had to adjust three different positions. If they have another corner go down, I think you could just slide McMurray out there because he knows that he played it last year. It's his natural position, and then you can play Boo at star, and that arguably gets, it might improve your secondary with how good Boo can be, but I don't know that he is. I don't know that they're going to move anybody else to safety. They've got Turrentine, Idris Farouk, and Caleb Beasley there. Now they need those sophomores to continue to get comfortable playing. But I think, in terms of corner, I think McMurray is probably their best option in case they got into a pinch if another one of their starters went down.
Safety is their one position that's kind of a little tricky because I think your number 4 guy is probably a freshman, as we were saying earlier, and I don't know if there's anyone you would want to move back there otherwise. So corner's the bigger concern now, but to your point, Ben, I think safety, Caleb Beasley's that top backup right now, and he played almost as many snaps as Farouk last week. And outside of those 3, you're hoping you stay healthy, so you don't have to play a 4th guy because it'd probably be a freshman. But Boo Carter could, I think, play there in a pinch. He's just not. He's not done that position as much, and I think he's a more natural fit at star. And yeah, I agree with Patrick that if anyone else goes down at corner, you'd probably slide McMurray outside, and William Wright would be the next option there behind him.
The gist of my question, though, is do we know how much Boo or McMurray has repped at safety in practice?
I don't think much at all. I've not heard of any activity there. If someone goes down, that maybe could change, but I've not heard of that happening. And McMurray, to that point, I think he's more. They have some guys who are kind of safety star and some guys who are more corner / star. I think McMurray's the corner / star variety, where those are the 2 positions he's going to play. Colton Hood would be in that same discussion. He's repped some at the star position, but he would obviously be a corner and more so than that. And I don't think he would play safety. So if injuries dictate otherwise, we'll see how they would pivot. But right now, I don't think they are really focused on getting those guys any work at safety that I've heard.
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating because I'm not taking Jalen McMurray off the field. I don't want to, and I think the easiest thing would be to bump him to corner over Ty Redmond to keep him on the field with Boo playing star. But I don't want to take Ty Redmond off the field, and I don't trust Boo mentally if he's not been repping at safety when he's barely been repping at the star position because of his ordeal throughout fall camp. I don't trust him mentally to handle the safety position all of a sudden somewhere he hasn't worked at a bunch. Because I think if you were wanting to slide somebody off the field, it might be one of those safeties, and I don't know that it's 15 either. I wonder if that safety spot becomes more of a 3-man rotation of Turrentine, Beasley, and Farouk, more than just those 2 guys absolutely solidifying themselves. So I don't know. I think that's all fascinating. Maybe that's just me in my head, but we have several more questions we need to discuss here on the GoVols247 podcast, a mailbag edition on this Thursday of ETSU week. And we will do so on the other side of this quick timeout. Welcome back into the GoVols247 podcast, a mailbag edition here on Thursday, September 4th of East Tennessee State week. We've got so much more to discuss, several questions to answer, and Patrick has a slew of ETSU knowledge that he wants to let everybody know about before we get out of here. But before we continue our conversation, as usual, I need to encourage you to go find us wherever you find your GoVols247 podcast. I guess if you're listening, you have found us, but if you wouldn't mind making sure that you are subscribed to us on Spotify, on Apple, and make sure you turn on the notifications as well, because you never know when breaking news is going to happen, like with Hezekiah Harris, like with Tristan Keys. We do our best to make sure that we have a podcast ready to go, and you never know when those may drop. And no, nothing is coming, at least that I'm aware of at the time of this recording, but just saying, you never know with any sport. So make sure you're locked in and following along there. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, you don't even have to mention me and how unfortunate it is to listen to me. You can talk about Patrick and Ryan's great work. We would greatly appreciate that. That helps our podcast out in a major way. Before we dive back into it, or I guess as we dive back into it, forgive me. 2015 105 Vol. I hope I said that name correctly. 2015 105 Vol. I guess there's two ways you could potentially pronounce that.
I hope there's a meaning to those numbers. I've always wondered that.
Yes. And 2000, I'm going to say it's, I don't know. I don't even want to misspeak, but 2015 105 Vol. I assume you're listening. Please let us know what the significance of those numbers mean. We would love to hear why those are your numbers. Patrick, he or she wants to know, how many touchdowns and interceptions will Joey Aguilar have at the end of the season?
I will go 27 touchdowns. What's the other? Yards or interceptions?
Picks.
6.
You almost nailed what I was going to go with. To be different, I'll say 28 touchdowns and I'll say 8 interceptions.
I'll say I'll kind of split the interceptions and say 7. And I'll say 25 touchdowns. I'll say 25. I'll say 25 and 7, but you add 5 rushing touchdowns and he gets to 30 touchdowns on the season. There you go with that one. Ryan, Smoky Mountain Vol wants to know, realistically, who do we get back for the Georgia game on the defensive side? After watching Georgia in game 1, how do you feel about the defense stopping Gunnar Stockton on the read option? Well, obviously, Ricky Gibson is not going to be back for the Georgia game. I don't see Jamal McCoy back for the Georgia game. And I think Jackson Moy is very, very much a coin flip, and that might be at best.
Yeah, I would agree with you on all of those, Ben. I think David Hobbs won't be back for that game. I don't believe Jermod McCoy will not, and Ricky Gibson obviously will not. So yeah, I think those 3 are definitely out. We'll find out. I guess that one thing we don't know about Saturday is was there anybody banged up who maybe came back into the game that's going to be held out in this game or anything like that, just to make sure they get to the Georgia game closer to full strength. That's always a possibility. But yeah, Jackson Moy is the big one I'm watching. And right now I would lean, I guess I would lean slightly toward the doubtful side of questionable, but I do think he is very questionable to your point. I think, like you said, coin flip at best is probably the right way to put it for now. But I've heard differing things this week from different people on whether he might really be back for the Georgia game. And so I would say that's still in play, but I think, there's a chance that's a multiple week absence.
Anything you would like to add, Patrick? I think Ryan hit the nail on the head.
I'm just looking forward to those SEC injury reports on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night.
Patrick, would you play Nathan Robinson this weekend? I would not. I know he needs reps, but I need him. It's more important for him to be available against Georgia.
To Ryan's point, there almost certainly will be some guys that walk out of the tunnel that haven't been on the radar that you're like, okay, this is precautionary. That almost
like David Sanders Jr. last week.
No, I think that was maybe a different situation. But would I play Nathan Robinson? I think you start him. Yeah, maybe you don't play him 50 snaps, but I mean, reward the guy for what he did last week, right?
Well, do you reward a guy that can't stay healthy, that you need healthy against Georgia? Ryan,
reward him.
Yes or no?
Play him 12 snaps. That's it.
I'd play him if he's good to go. If there's any question at all, and I think rest would help him, then maybe I'm sitting him out. But just in the interest of not getting him hurt beyond what he already is, I'm not doing that. But if it's like a hamstring or something where you need to rest it, then sure, it makes sense to rest a guy like that.
Patrick, would you rest Joey Aguilar? He was a little gimpy.
He's not hurt. Too. He stayed in the game. And Joey needs reps as well. But Nathan Robinson,
he's good. He don't need any reps. We saw.
He doesn't. He's the next JJ Watt. Jared Allen.
Ask you this one.
TJ Watt.
What if David Sanders is a little bit less than 100%? You playing him or sitting him out this week?
Playing him because he needs reps. He hasn't played a single rep of college football.
Yeah, I agree.
And I also don't. I think last week's injury was very, very minor. I think Nathan Robinson's ankle injury, I believe it's an ankle, is more at risk than David Sanders' shoulder. So ankles are not anything to play with. And no. I'll reward him against Georgia. I am a big Nathan Robinson fan. I'll reward him against Georgia.
Ankle's one of those that would fall in line with what I'm saying, like a hamstring where rest is going to help that one. So I could definitely see the reason for sitting him out with that one.
But it will be interesting to see because I'm not denying like he absolutely needs reps. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a rare instance in which the availability for the following week, especially considering all the other injuries on the interior as well with Moy and Hobbs. Like I don't know. I would not want to risk that one if I were in charge, but that's why I don't get paid the big bucks. Mississippi Vol wants to know, did someone who shall not be named who celebrated a birthday yesterday, we hope he had a wonderful birthday yesterday, did that person take the podcast music and introductions with him when he left 247? Yes, essentially. Not in like a bad way, but we allowed him to take them with him. We thought it'd be nice. Just we're gonna freshen things up. Not because that intro was wrong or anything like that, or we disliked that intro or music. It's just I don't know. Felt like it was time for a change. So we are still obviously in the progress of hammering out those intros. I am actually working on something as we speak, so we hope to have an intro in the meantime. But also, if I'm being totally honest, we're not a podcast site. We write for a living. So right now our goal is to be as efficient with the podcast as possible, which is why it has taken me a little bit longer to get an intro here. And I do apologize for that because it does absolutely need one. Wes did not just take it with him out of spite or anything like that. Yeah. It just we thought it'd be a nice time for a refresh, not a rebranding. I don't want to make it seem like that, but just freshen things up, new look.
Similar answer to why we kind of switched to behind enemy lines, and I'm not trying to ask some of the off-color questions that Wes did when we talked to the opponent beat writers. You don't want off-brand Wes. I wouldn't be as good at that as he was, and we can just kind of get right to the point and get in and out the football related questions.
No, Ryan, you were very on brand. Wes, he did take the proprietary audio with him that he created, and then I think he also paid for the other music. Yes. And we just don't have Wes Rucker money anymore. So
that is true.
None of that's true. I made all that up. Yeah.
Well, he did pay for the music. I think that part of it is true. But no,
I'm just having some fun here on the internet. That's all.
Yes, as we should. But he did not take it out of spite. If we would have asked him for it, if I texted him right now and asked him for it, he would absolutely give it back. Although the intro, did it have his voice in the intro?
I don't so.
No, it didn't. It was just kind of the commercial stuff.
He had that recorded outro. That's a different thing, though.
Yeah. No, the intro, it did not, and he was not in the intro. So if I texted him right now and was like, hey, can I have the intro? He would absolutely give it to us. But we were just going to freshen things up like you see folks do from time to time.
That's our version of a new score bug at the bottom of the screen, right?
That's right.
We need to work in Josh Heupel's Netflix line. F everybody else, we'll go dominate their ass. That needs to be in our new intro. Apparently, that's the team saying, right? Ryan, after post game, starts Thomas with the FEB, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
What does that mean, Ryan?
Talking about that. That was fun.
Mississippi Vol also wants to know if ESPN College Game Day is going to recruit Mr. Callahan to replace Lee Corso for their Saturday broadcast, since he loves to tell people not so fast.
They can they can do a lot better than me. Although I guess there'd be some logic in putting me on a screen if you can cover my face with the mascot head. So there's that.
Come on, Patrick, go ahead and do it.
I was just gonna say there's better chances game day could be here next week. I think it'll either be here or I think it's Florida LSU next week also.
Yeah.
But Patrick, show College Game Day the technology that it could use to represent Mr. Callahan.
All right, hold on. Give me a second. Keep talking.
While Patrick pulls up Mr. Callahan on the video, which if you haven't subscribed to our GoVols247 YouTube page, go do that because we are posting video versions of our podcast as well. And then you can see Ryan's face twice here on the podcast as you can now see on the screen if you were watching on
it's like the world's worst YouTube. Before and after.
Too much. I need Patrick to come back. Too much Callahan on my screen at the moment. That's Ryan,
what I missed.
Vols fan 1104 wants to know, Ryan, if you expect Tennessee's offense to continue to look like it did this past weekend, or was that just eye candy to set Georgia up and make them prepare for extra stuff and get them off a little bit?
No, I think they're going to do a lot of the same stuff, and I think they'll probably we'll see, but I think they might even expand beyond what we saw this week. But I will say some of the things you saw that were new were things we had seen, and even in the little bit of practice we had seen, we saw some glimpses of some of that, and just weren't really allowed to share full details on what it was going to look like. But yeah, I think that was very much in line with what Tennessee worked on the whole offseason, and I think there's more in the bag if they want to go to it.
I apologize if I butcher this name, but Matals 14, which I love the 14 on the end. As Ben McKee 14, I certainly approve of that number. Patrick, who is one player you feel will break out and make a name for himself the further the season goes? Offense, defense, and special teams, if you have one.
I don't know about breakout. I want to see. I feel like Ethan Davis can make a little bit more. I don't say have an impact because Joey Halsey was pretty complimentary of his blocking earlier this week. And to that point, there's, I think, a clip. I don't know if Cole Kublik put it out there, but him driving some dude 20 yards downfield. I mean, that's kind of the development you've wanted to see from him. But I think those tight ends can be such a change-up weapon, particularly if Tennessee is able to continue running the football. I think you'll see some of the same actions that we've seen in the past where, if they're blocking so effectively, they can use them on play action. So I want to see how he develops over the course of the year. We touched on Braylon Staley earlier. What can he continue to do from that position? And I think defensively, you've already kind of got one in Colton Hood through one game. Obviously, there's a lot of offseason talk about him, but he certainly seems like a guy that's going to keep it together. And then I think you should just look at the other side and Ty Redmond too. What can he do? It's tough being a freshman corner in college football, particularly in SEC, because other teams will find you and come at you. So he's got to be ready for that. But seems like he's very level-headed and very mature. And William Martinez talked about that this week too, where the moment's not too big for him. And certainly he has grown up quickly coming in here and playing for a really good high school program too, we should mention at Milton, which is has a lot of talent every year and is usually competing. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but competing well into the Georgia high school playoffs. So he's coming from a really established program and appears to have a mature head on his shoulders to handle getting thrown into the fire early. And then also, I think he's going to be in the starting lineup going for the next little bit. So I think he's got the ability to handle that and the physical ability to continue to make plays on the perimeter on defense.
You got a thunderstorm in the background in case you heard thunder. I'll throw in DeJuan Morris at running back. I think it's telling that he got some work in the first game. That surprised me a little bit, but not totally shocked there because I think they think he's a playmaker. So running backs usually get dinged up at some point. I think you'll see him in there at some point this season. Both freshman receivers, for that matter, even though we didn't see much of Travis Smith last week. Travis Smith and Rodarius Jackson would be in that same category. On defense, I don't know if he qualifies as a breakout candidate, but I don't think enough people are talking about Edwin Spillman after last week. I think he's going to have a big year. He looked really good last week, I thought. Maybe Jeremiah Tielander's interception overshadowed that a little bit, but I thought when Arion Carter and Edwin Spillman were out there together, I thought Tennessee looked really athletic at linebacker. So I think Spillman's a guy that's a pretty strong breakout candidate for a guy who only played, 3 games last year?
I think Braylon Staley and Nathan Robinson are the leaders in the clubhouse for breakout candidates on their respective sides of the football. I don't know that there's anybody on special teams. I mean, maybe Bennett Brady, since he's the first time starter of that group. Maybe DeJuan Morris gets in on special teams and is able to make some plays there. I guess he would be the other option. Ryan, before we get you out of here and let you go do radio, Jay Marking did ask, with Ricky Gibson out, who are the main guys in the secondary position now? I think we pretty much addressed the secondary and who those main guys are going to be with what we discussed in the first segment. Certainly Colton Hood, I think, takes the reins alongside Jermod McCoy once Jermod comes back. But with Ricky out, I think Colton Hood takes the lead there. But if there's something else you'd like to know, Jay Marking, about the secondary that we did not discuss earlier, please let us know on the checkerboard, of course. But Ryan B. Palmer 28 wants to know, with Jermod McCoy, how is he progressing? When do you expect him to return? Is there a chance he sits the year out and focuses on preparing for the NFL draft? We did mention Rick or Jermod in passing. Don't expect him against Georgia. Sounds like maybe trying to knock rust off against UAB and maybe back full-time against Mississippi State.
I think somewhere in that ballpark, makes sense. His progress since the start of preseason camp has been really good. He's been out there a lot of days. If you saw him on some days, you wouldn't know he was coming off an ACL injury. But that's kind of what it looks like the final month when you're coming back from that, right? It's more about seeing how much your knee can endure. If you have some swelling on the day after you really go hard and things like that. So you're trying to ease back into it. But yeah, he's been looking good for a while. So I think he's coming along nicely. I don't think he'll be back for the Georgia game. So yeah, maybe UAB at worst, barring a setback at worst, I would say Mississippi State. It does sound like, everything I've heard suggests it'll be sometime toward the end of this month. And that would be obviously good to get him in there before the open date. So he'll be, truly have knocked off the rust in time for that Alabama game in October and even the Arkansas game after the open date.
You're looking over the Hogs. That went well for Tennessee last year. So blame Callahan when Tennessee loses to Arkansas. Like I said, we're going to let Callahan get out of here and go do some fun radio. Of course, folks can keep up with your great coverage right now, Ryan, at GoVols247.com.
Absolutely. And even though our big sale just ended, we still got 60% off for a few days on an annual subscription. So take advantage of that sale while it's still going. I think that's just through the weekend. So take advantage of that while you can and join GoVols247.com.
Thanks, Ryan. Enjoy the football this weekend, my friend.
Same to you. Appreciate it, guys.
And, of course, we will be back with a live podcast this weekend like Patrick and I did following this past Saturday's win over Syracuse. We're going to plan to go live after every football game this season. I mean, we're recording a post-game podcast regardless. We're using the same service that allows us to go live. So we're going to try and knock out two birds with one stone there. And don't really have a set time. Maybe I'll tweet it out a certain time after each game when we are going to press record. And we'll retweet that from the GoVols247 staff account as well. And I'm a little more active than Patrick and Ryan on X, but I will make sure that those guys spread the word as well. Once again, make sure you're locked into our GoVols247 YouTube page. That's where we will be going live. And then, of course, if you miss us, then you can check out the podcast version of it as well. And I would just say, although we don't have an exact time, because, of course, we are going through post-game media and we have things that we need to write before we podcast. Again, we are a writing service first and foremost. I would just say like kind of 2 hours after the game goes final. That 2-hour, 2.5 hour window, I think is a good time frame for when folks can expect us to be live on our YouTube page. So make sure you are on the lookout for that. Ryan will certainly be back with us on Saturday following Tennessee's game against East Tennessee State. Just a couple more questions here, Patrick, and then I'm going to give you the floor and let you do a breakdown of the Bucks. But before we get there, Luke Legend 27 wants to know what you think Joey Aguilar's ceiling is. Is his week one performance his ceiling, or is it higher in your opinion? I wrote a column earlier this week, or I guess on Sunday, where I thought it was so good. His performance in week one was so good that it kind of makes you wonder, what could be for Tennessee this year. I don't think that he's going to be in the Heisman conversation like Hendon was, but there were some things there that reminded me of Hendon and the Hendon-led offense. And it wasn't, I love the arm strength. I love the playmaking ability, the ability to use his legs. Like there's a lot that you love in terms of physical attributes, but my opinion from that patch really stems from all the intangibles. I mean, for him to be as poised and as confident and as comfortable within the offense as he was, I think it really speaks to the coaching job of Josh Heupel and Joey Halzle. To have a guy that got here in May look as prepared as Joey did in that opener, I think really speaks to their ability to develop and coach. And kudos to Joey. Folks were wondering about his film study habits at UCLA. He also seemed well prepared, and he just didn't look like a guy playing in an offense for the first time when he got here in May. Not got here in January or last August. Like he looked like a guy that's been in the system for 2 to 3 years. I thought that was the most impressive part of his performance in week one.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Foster probably needs to be paying more attention to his own quarterback's habits than his former quarterback's habits based on how they both looked on Saturday. I don't think it was a ceiling because I think he still missed. And I don't want to, there were some what they would probably call layups. And I think Louis Riddick on the broadcast for ABC might even refer to it that way, where, if guys corner's playing 10, 15 yards off and you run a 5-yard stop route, that should be a layup. That should be easy pitch and catch. And it's something that Joey Halzle mentioned, you got to put that ball not only where it can be caught, but also where you give your player time to turn and make something happen after the catch. So you look at, right before the touchdown, right before halftime, he throws a sort of a bubble screen to Mike Matthews, gets, that's a catch on the move that lets him set up a couple of defenders. That's a nice, I think 15, 16-yard gain. And there was another throw sort of out wide to Staley where it didn't kind of lead him. It was kind of more on his back shoulder, back hip. So it kind of, Staley couldn't really get going. He gets tackled pretty much right away for just a couple of yards. Those are little things that can help Joey's stats look better, but also move the offense forward. And as you get into, the SEC and playing some of these more talented defenses, I think Syracuse is probably a 6, 7, 8 win team, but they're better offensively than they are defensively. I think that's clear. I think that team's going to score points, but they're also going to give up a lot. And against the Georgias of the world, when you've got open guys, even if it's just for short 5, 6 yard gains, I mean, that matters. I mean, 2nd and 4 is much different than 2nd and 10. So, and this offense is so rhythm based that if you're continuing to make positive gains, you don't have incompletions. You need that to keep this offense going at the best rate. So I don't know that was his ceiling. Obviously, I think it was pretty good. But if he can clean up some of those throws, some of those easy throws, Joey Halzle talked about some of the RPOs that maybe they didn't complete or maybe he was a little bit off on, then that's something that can advance the offense even further because those are yards you're going to gain as opposed to incompletions where you're not getting anything.
Luke Legend 27 added to his question that he thought that Joey played well week one, but with his tendency to throw high, how quickly can he clean that up since he's an older quarterback and will be going against tougher competition later in the season? You obviously did a great job of detailing where he can continue to improve.
It's and mechanically more than anything.
Yeah, and Louis Riddick talked about that on the broadcast about how they identified something over the summer mechanically that he was doing that was forcing the football to go high. So just kind of a work in progress. And I think we all trust Josh Heupel and Joey Halzle as quarterback developers to coach that out of him. And I don't know that he'll ever be perfect at it, but I think it'll certainly improve, especially as Joey and the receivers continue to learn each other as well. I missed a couple of questions from Jay Marking just based off of where my computer screen was sitting. So I apologize, Jay Marking, for being a little delayed here. But Ryan, 2 more questions from him. We already talked about kind of both of them in the midst of our podcast today. But do you think Jackson Moy will be back for the Georgia game? I couldn't remember if you reported that he'd be out for an extended period. I think with Moy, as I mentioned earlier, a bit of a coin flip. But I posted on the board, I guess Sunday morning, or I guess it was Monday morning, because Moy was in the facility on Sunday, pushing a sled, going through, the workout that they do Sunday after games and a walkthrough, I believe it is. So that sounds like a guy that will be able to get back somewhat soon. But we'll see. I think his status is very much up in the air. I think I would lean yes, but do not quote me on that at all. Again, very much a coin flip. Your thoughts on that? And then also, do you think David Sanders Jr. will start against ETSU or after? I certainly think he'll be starting this weekend. But I do think it's like an interesting question. It's something that got brought up on the board. I mean, Tennessee's offensive line looked that good without David Sanders Jr. He's still one of their best 5 and needs to be starting at right tackle. But I guess that conversation speaks to just how impressive the offensive line looked against Syracuse.
No, I mean, David Sanders is their guy. I mean, you don't want to say it's like the NFL where you're paying your franchise guy, you're playing your franchise guys. But I mean, it is what it is at this point.
I mean, it is like the NFL now,
right? I mean, you're not doing yourself or David Sanders any good if you're not playing him. So you got to play him. And I do think he'll be back. I think Moy, like you said, I think 50-50 coin flip is a good way to see it. I think he'll probably be listed as questionable next Wednesday night. And it could be maybe a pain tolerance thing. If it's that, I could see, Jackson, he's a tough guy. I think he'll be trying to give it a go. But if it's your elbow that's giving you trouble and it's affecting your strength and your ability to strike and all the things and your power and the ability to do the things you need to do to be an effective defensive lineman, then I think that's where there could be some trouble. But like I said, we'll see on him. I think it's a possibility, but he's certainly more likely to play than pretty much all these other guys. Gibson, McCoy, Hobbs. But we'll have to see just kind of how it progresses over the next few days.
And the good news for Tennessee is that you play UAB, which he does not need to play against UAB, and you have an open week after that. So you have 2 weeks in which you can afford to sit him after the Georgia game if he can just make it through the Georgia game. And also with David Sanders Jr., I think you have to remember in terms of the lineup, Jesse Perry's not going to the bench. Jesse Perry's going back to right guard. Wendell Moy's going back to left guard. And I liked what I saw from Sham Umarov over the weekend against Syracuse, but if we're being brutally honest, I guess, you'd rather have David Sanders Jr. in there than Sham Umarov, even though Sham did look good in his first career start. Here's an interesting question from Lifetime Bama Hater, which has got to be up there in terms of like top 5 names on the board, top 5, top 10 for sure. And
it's been a good week for that person.
Yes, and it may be top 3 as well. An Adidas question: assuming Adidas doesn't make footballs, will Tennessee be free to use whatever brand they prefer? I seem to recall there was a plus when they switched to Nike with the football. Something about Nike footballs were better for kicking. Any insight there on the footballs?
I don't have any insight there. I think Tennessee will, you could go to Adidas, you could go to Wilson. I don't know what other, what other brands there are. Honestly, I'd have to double check, but I don't really have any insight there if that's, if that's going to be part of the deal or what. Do you?
We will. I do not. We will look into that though, and see what we can find out there and make a board post about that one. Cool Dre 615. I think just a couple here that we have left before I let you give your spiel on the Bucks. How much of the recent recruiting success and flipped commitments is a direct impact of the Adidas deal? In parentheses, he put money behind the Adidas deal. He or she put money. I mean, I think it's very obvious that there's certainly
it helped with keys.
Oh, it helped with keys, and that's the biggest. I don't think it's a coincidence that Tristan Keys flipped after the announcement, and it's no coincidence that Tennessee's flipping to Adidas, and Tristan Keys is an Adidas athlete. Now, I don't want it to seem like that's the only reason Tennessee got Tristan Keys, because I don't believe that's true whatsoever. Texas A&M is also an Adidas school, and he essentially flipped to Tennessee over Texas A&M. And remember, there was Miami interest, strong Miami interest at one point as well, another Adidas program. So did Adidas play a role? Absolutely. There's no denying that. Played a big role probably. But I also think Kelsey Pope's recruitment played as big of a role as it could have in this one as well. And that's what you got to remember is, like, are we in the NIL era? Yes. But when you're recruiting against Texas A&M, LSU, Miami, like it's going to be the same dollar points. And when it's the same dollar points and pretty similar deals here and there, like it's going to come down to relationships and development on the field once you kind of get past the money. And Tennessee for Tristan Keys checked those boxes. So certainly the Adidas deal is helping and is already helping. And I think Tristan Keys is the best example of that. Simpson Vol wants to know your thoughts on the most surprising impressions, positive or negative, from other SEC teams during week one. I think the easy one is Alabama. We did not expect Alabama to look like that. I mean, that was, I mean, in my,
well, one of us here picked FSU in our picks.
There you go. Well, you're going to pick.
So,
I mean, Alabama could be playing Air Force, and you're going to pick Air Force. No, I'm kidding.
Of course, I'm going to pick the United States Air Force.
There
Academy.
you go. Proud of you.
I am an American.
There you
go. But yeah, you know, again, I feel like I've been on an island. Like everyone knows, like Nick Saban's not there anymore, right? Like, has everyone forgotten about this?
You didn't think they were going to look that bad to where they're not running to the football and look incompetent in the trenches? Like, nobody expected that.
Well, I mean, this is a team that lost to Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Michigan last year.
It's also a team that won, 9-10 games last year? And
True.
Barely missed the playoffs. I
Why
agree.
did they miss the playoff? Because they got out-coached.
Yes.
And outplayed by teams with lesser talent. That's some of the stuff, like, was AJ McCarron out here that's acting like Bama is poor. Like, their recruiting and talent is still, their recruiting and recruiting stars are all, it's not the talent, it's the issue. As you kind of touched on, it's, I mean, I think you've got a major cultural problem. Yeah. If you're not, if you're out there not hustling and just getting pushed around by a team that won 2 games last season. And, we should give credit to Mike Norvell because, that culture at that program has apparently undergone some pretty drastic swings when you go from the 13-0 season to losing by 60 in the Orange Bowl because half your team opted out. Then you have the issues they had last season. But, they were the more physical team. Gus Malzahn had Alabama, on skates again. So, was it a series of errors that led to Alabama's downfall? Yeah, but again, you lost to 3 unranked teams last season. This isn't a total fluke. But I will say, I will to the question from Simpsonville, I will go 2 different directions. I will say Arch Manning looked awful from what I could tell. I was surprised by that. I have been I don't want to say I have been. I was a big Arch believer going into the season. I still think Texas will probably be fine in the long run. Ohio State is Ohio State, even though they lost so much talent, they're still pretty loaded. And that can be a tough place to play up there. And Texas outgained them by over 100 yards. So it's not like they just got run off the field. They just, didn't get that 4th down at the goal line. And their quarterback was one-hopping dudes and missing wide open guys. So, I think Arch will probably be fine. And I got to give some credit to LSU. I've dogged Brian Kelly, in the past. They haven't won an opener under him. I thought he looked like, very unlikable in the Netflix series. And that's saying something because he was kind of sharing an episode with Shane Beamer, who actually I thought came off, I don't want to say likable, but just kind of normal, like a quirky, normal dad kind of dude.
I thought he came off likable.
Brian Kelly came off like, a guy that was from Massachusetts that started his career as a politician, which I didn't know. So, but his team played well. I know Dabo Swinney tried to downplay it with like his final exam quote earlier this week. He was like, this is a final exam, first day of the year, first day of the school yet, first school day of the year. They got a 65. We got a 58. I mean, you could say that, but LSU won at Clemson. That's a big deal. And that's a program that has struggled in openers, and they played a lot of these kind of big time openers. So to go on the road and get the job done like they did, I think that was an impressive. Now, will LSU be able to do it throughout the whole season? I don't know. I still don't know if I trust Brian Kelly against the schedule they're going to play. But I think those are the 2 big non-Alabama, non-Tennessee takeaways, where it was Arch Manning looking as bad as he did, and then LSU going on the road and actually winning an opener for once.
The last direct question that we have not answered but have talked about in passing going off of that is from Bleed Orange 1899. After seeing Alabama's performance against Florida State, do you think the chances are better that we can go to Tuscaloosa and come away with a win? I thought chances were decent, but now I like our chances. And as I said earlier, I totally agree with you, Bleed Orange, 1899. I had Tennessee going 9-3 with losses to Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. And part of that was my thought behind the Alabama game was just because it was on the road. But I would change that right now on going into week 2. I think Tennessee wins that game at the moment. I think Tennessee's a better football team. I think Josh Heupel's a better football coach. I think Tennessee's culture is better. Is the road atmosphere going to be an issue? Yes. Tennessee still needs to, as a program, prove that they can handle those atmospheres on the road. But yeah, I said it earlier. I think Tennessee. My prediction now would be 10-2 for Tennessee with a win over Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
I would agree. Like I said, we talked about Alabama's schedule. Hard to see them winning at Georgia. We'll see how good Georgia is. We're not going to know, I guess, until after they play here because they just played Marshall and they're playing Austin Peay. So Georgia's going to be a mystery coming to Neyland as much as Georgia can be a mystery under Kirby Smart. They've got to go there. They got Vanderbilt coming home. We'll see what Vanderbilt's got. They're at Virginia Tech this week with Diego Pavia. I don't think they'll drop far. And certainly that's a team that's going to play with a lot more effort than Alabama showed. And then, we'll see what Missouri is too. That's a place that, you can get up there and, if you can't get up for a pretty charged up atmosphere in Tallahassee, what are you going to do when it's maybe less than charged up atmosphere in Columbia? And who knows what Missouri is going to be like at that point. They've got Kansas. I don't know who they have between now and then, but it's just the ebbs and flows of the season, right? It's hard to project what's going to be, what's going to happen this week, much less than a month from now. But that's why we love the sport because things can ebb and flow and change so quickly. But Alabama's got some real problems. They got to do some soul searching in that roster and that program. I think what they said, they had a player-only meeting. That sometimes works. It sometimes doesn't. So, they play ULM this week. ULM can beat Nick Saban. They probably certainly could beat Kalen DeBoer too, right?
What do we need to know about East Tennessee State, my friend?
Well, we touched a little bit, I think, in passing at times that they've got 2 Power 4 starters at quarterback and Cade McNamara and Jacoby Criswell. But this was a run-first team last season. I think they were led the SoCon in rushing, and last week they rushed for almost 400 yards and with 4 different backs. So Devontae Houston is probably the lead guy. He is a UConn transfer. They've got some other guys who are a little bit more compact and downhill, straight ahead runners. When I've watched most of the first half on the grainy ESPN Plus stream, and they were running some tempo. It looked a little bit like watching Tennessee. They were spreading the field, running some tempo. So Tennessee's going to have to be ready to get the communication down quick on defense. They're going to have to tackle in space because they're probably going to have to play with some light boxes. So you need to make sure defensively at the second and third levels, you're in the right gaps so you don't let runs spit out or spill out to the perimeter. They're going to have to tackle on the perimeter. So it's sort of a misnomer because the headline's going to be they've got these 2 quarterbacks, but they're kind of a run first team. Defensively, a lot of transfers. I think like 50-something new players on this team, so a lot of different guys coming in there. But again, it's SEC versus FCS. Tennessee should be able to go out there and name their score. This is a Tennessee versus Tennessee kind of game. If they go out there and play clean, I think that's the biggest thing that Josh Heupel and the staff will want to see is you don't have a lot of sloppiness, not a lot of penalties, bad tackling, busts, turnovers. You don't want to see those things happen. And you don't want to play the scoreboard. I think that'll be something that Heupel and the staff are going to be emphasizing this week because he brought it up after the Syracuse game. He didn't think they played really a full 60 minutes, kind of talked about them dipping in the second half against Syracuse when they went up by 24, which is why it got down to 12 and Syracuse had the ball with a chance to pull within 1 score. So you don't want to play the opponent or the scoreboard in this game. I think that's the biggest thing for Tennessee. And if they can do that and not get anybody else hurt, I think that'll make it a good Saturday at Neyland Stadium for the Vols.
What can people find with a trip over to GoVols247 this week?
Well, to your point about the NFL, I'll have a list of what former Tennessee players are in the NFL. I believe it's 32.
I think it's 33.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what UT put out. I got to double check if Gabe Jeudy-Lally is actually on the Titans roster. He was and he wasn't. So that's the one that I need to double check. But it's around that many. Obviously, some of those guys will be backup quarterbacks. I think they've got a couple of those with Joe Milton and Josh Dobbs. And then Hendon Hooker is one of the practice squad guys. So I'll have that. We'll continue to preview ETSU with the other half of the matchups. I will do another Empty the Notebook, kind of wrapping things up on Friday before kickoff. We'll have our bold predictions, which I thought we actually all hit on one last week against Syracuse, right? I think we were pretty good there. So those are always fun. Fans were getting in on that too. I don't know the poster's name, but somebody on the checkerboard called a Jeremiah Thielander interception. So I'm sure he was pretty fired up about that tip drill pick that he had in the third quarter. But that's what we've got going on. We have this podcast as well. I think Ryan's got some recruiting preview this weekend maybe. So I'm sure he'll be somewhere. He won't tell us, but I'm sure he'll be somewhere on Friday night catching some high school football. So plenty of coverage loaded up at GoVols247 for another big, exciting football weekend, NFL and college.
That is correct. It'll be a fun weekend at GoVols247.com, and I encourage you to check us out. For Ryan Callahan, Patrick Brown, and myself, Ben McKee, this has been another edition of the GoVols247, a mailbag edition of the GoVols247 podcast.